Internet here for Card3 TV for another edition of the Poker Buzz. I've got Daniel Negreanu here, and we're going to talk about your latest blog. Now, you've got to be a stats man. Tell me what made you compile all these stats and really look at them carefully?
Well, I'm a stats geek, like the biggest nerd ever, and the World Poker Tour is set up now. The site is better than it ever has been in terms of like information. So now they have a list of how many events people have played. So people are always wondering, okay, obviously the guy who plays the most events is usually going to have the most caches, and that doesn't necessarily tell the whole story, So what I decided to do, as geeky as I am, is I started to do like every person who's played 30 or more World Poker Tour events, I did their ROI, which is return on investment. So for example, if they've played 10 tournaments and they've made 52,000, that means, they get back 5,200 for every tournament. That's not good. I also kept track of cash percentage and then how often they make the final table. And you see some interesting trends. One I think is really interesting is that the number one, cash percentage guy is Casey Castle. He's cashed 30% of the events. And he's stuck money in the World Poker Tour, which is amazing when you think about it. So it teaches people a little bit also about what kind of strategy you should have going into these things. You go for the final table, you go for wins. Squeaking into the money is not a recipe for long-term success.
Now, this has been a conversation that people have been talking about a lot. Can you be successful and win on the tournament circuit because of the prices you have to pay for travel and expenses? So what did you figure out was the ROI that you need to be successful traveling the circuit?
Well, like I said, I think the minimum you need to have is like 20,000. So if you figure the average buy-in is about 10,000, you've got flights, you've got accommodation, you've got taxes. So you got to make at least 20,000 per tournament to make it worth it. Now, that's if you're not playing satellites. And I think it's really important for any tour, like the World Poker Tour, the European Poker Tour. One of the main reasons it's so successful is that PokerStars is continually sending players there online. So the best way to subsidize your tournament buy-ins is by playing satellites. And if you're not, it's really tough to fade. But for example, if you're playing 10,000 events, but you're on average spending 3,000 or 3,500 to get in, now if your ROI is 10,000, you are making a profit, But 20,000 is the number, and I found that of the 176 that I did, only 56 of those had 20,000 or more.
It seems like pros don't really play satellites, and they just kind of say that it might be a waste of time. They'd rather just buy in. And you think that that's something that people are overlooking?
Well, here's the thing. The high-end pros, guys like Carlos Mortensen, who makes $107,000 per tournament, he's number one on the list. Well, he doesn't need to play no satellites because he's obviously got, some success. For those grinding and those starting out, they have to respect and understand that, $10,000 every tournament really adds up. And if you're not subsidizing playing cash games and grinding or satellites, the bills can run up real high. When I first started out, even when the tournaments were smaller, I always played satellites and I always played cash games just to be able to afford the swings of a tournament poker, because it's not like a steady upswing. It's, like that.
Looking at your stats, is it going to be a tough reality check for some of those people who may be near the bottom?
That's one of the things that people have commented about. It's like, well, here's the thing. But I said the stats are just there. People should know anyway. Right. But you look at some of the players, and you look at a guy who's like played 40 events, and he's getting back 1,000 per tournament, and that's average like 9,000 loss per tournament. So either A, they got to step up their game and change their strategy, or start playing more satellites to fade it. Right. It's just the reality of it.
Are you happy looking at your own stats?
Yeah, I'm. That's one of the things I was curious about how I did, and I make like 68.5 per tournament approximately in return, which put me in like the top 10. I'm also in the top 10 in number of events played. I've played like 81 WPT events. But yeah, I'm happy. My final table percentage is a little bit lower than it should be, and my cash percentage is like 22.1. I told you, I'm just a nerd. I love stats, I love numbers, and I seriously spent over 12 hours compiling that spreadsheet.
Well, I'm sure a lot of players appreciate it, and it's a good hard look at how you've done, and thank you so much.
You got it.
Christiana with Daniel Negreanu for Card3 TV.